Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Eitan Berger. Today on Sizzling with Suiza, our special guest, author of the cookbook, The Kosher Butcher's Wife, Sharon Lurie, shows us how to prepare a hamburger patty for a real South African braai with the help of Debbie Suiza.
This morning I have a very special guest on my show. She's a prolific writer, a master chef, and popularly known as the Kosher Butcher's Wife. I would like to welcome Sharon Lurie onto the show.
Hello, Debbie.
Hi, Sharon.
Nice to be here with you all.
Very nice to have you here. Sharon and I have got together this morning to share with you some traditional recipes, all under the umbrella of the traditional South African braai. Sharon, what are you going to be making for us this morning?
Well, I think if one of the most popular things that they ask us at the butcher is for a recipe for a decent burger patty. People want that, that steakhouse kind of taste. And how do we do it? So that's what I'm going to show you, how to prepare.
Whilst Sharon is going to be preparing her not-so-traditional burgers, I will be preparing the not-so-traditional sauces for the burgers.
We are going to start off with the meat. Now you'll notice that there's quite a bit of fat because that's where your taste comes. You don't want a dried out burger. We've got about 30% fat to 70% meat in here. And it's done on a coarser grinder because we want the meat to be a little aerated, and we don't want it to be so fine. Otherwise that compacts the meat. And what we're going to add to the burger patties is onion. Now, we can either add onion and garlic raw, as we have here. We can add it, if you want to, you can fry it. Today, we are going to add it raw, and we're going to add some eggs, which we've checked, and some parsley, which has also been checked, obviously, and some cornflake crumbs, water, salt, and pepper. Add the onion, and I put the garlic in here as well. I'm going to add my eggs, the parsley, our cornflake crumbs, a little bit of water, just a cup. So I just sort of mix it lightly. Remember that the water is going to absorb quite a bit of the cornflake mixture, which helps to bind it. I like to do them quite big. Don't worry if they feel a bit loose. Don't panic about that. Some people roll them into balls and then they sort of flatten them. Okay, I think we just put a little bit of oil on here because the oil helps, you know, with braaiing as well.
Sticking.
It prevents it from sticking, so there's a little oil there. And then something very important is just to squash it a little in the middle because they always rise, hamburgers. And then it just, you know, it keeps them flat. And then you can put all the sauces on without the sauces sort of falling off the side.
That I imagine would enable some even cooking as well.
Absolutely.
So how much mince have you got in this bowl?
I like to do about, each one to weigh about 250 grams.
Okay, so how many...
It will shrink a little. This is a kilo.
It's a kilo, so
but we've added onions and we've added a bit more.
So it expands the...
Right, so we should get about 6 out of this one. And then also, just before braaiing, I would just put a little bit on. You can put spray and cook if you prefer to, but this just prevents it from sticking to that grid, because there's nothing worse than after making your beautiful burgers and you just half...
Do you oil the grid as well?
I oil the grid as well, yes. And we are done, and I think our braai is ready for us. Well, we're outside now in this lovely, windy, beautiful Cape Town, but who cares, as long as the hair doesn't get into a burger patty, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle this, a little bit of salt and pepper on top, I got that tip from a friend of mine, but of course you can put some salt and pepper on, you know, while you're making up the mixture. Then I'm going to just put a little bit of oil on the grid so that our burgers don't stick. And then I'm going to take the pre-oiled burgers and put them on, and I want you to hear the beautiful sizzle. Oh, that's what we really want. We want that lovely sizzle. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just close this lid just a little, and then as I explained before, you'll actually see how, when I take the burger patty off, you'll see when it's ready, when the whole thing actually comes away and there's no resistance from the meat on the grill. Right, do you see how we're getting there because they're not resisting like they were? Do you see that they're sort of sliding along the grid? I like to put my bun on here, warm both sides. And there you go. Just wait for those. Let's just see if there's any resisting here. Still. So this is what you really want on your bun to look like. So I say that's the bottom. How's the top doing? Yeah, the top's also great. Okay guys, so that's that. Now we're going to try all the wonderful sauces. And what else would I serve with this? Probably some nice slap chips. Okay.
We all know that to make a braai hamburger special, they need to be topped with some special sauces. We continue with Debbie in the kitchen, showing us how easy it is to whip some up.
For my first sauce, I'm going to make something that is definitely not traditionally South African. This is called ajada, which is a Ladino name for garlic mayonnaise. It's a recipe that originally came from Egypt and was then taken into Spain and into Rhodos. So the ingredients that I'm going to be using today are 2 pieces of stale white bread that have been soaking in room temperature water, 12 cloves of garlic, some za'atar, which is an Israeli herb called hyssop, and it's mixed with sesame seeds, 1 egg, 2 cups of oil, juice of 1 lemon, and salt and pepper. So the first thing that I'm going to do, Sharon, and it takes a little bit of muscle over here, is I'm going to take the bread out of the water and I'm going to squeeze all the water out of it. If you are averse to doing it this way, then what people often do is they will use mashed potatoes instead of bread, but it doesn't give the same consistency. It's very important also that you actually take the crusts off the bread. You don't want any thick pieces in it. So we take the bread and we put it into the blender. We will then take our 12 cloves of garlic and you will put the garlic in. You will then take the egg and put the egg in, and we start to blend. So you need to ensure that the consistency that you actually want to get is like a mayonnaise. It's got to be thick. But before we put the oil and the lemon juice into it, we want to make sure that these ingredients are actually bound together properly. The smell coming from here, I don't know if you can smell it, but it is absolutely unbelievable. You have to be a garlic lover for this.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 cups of olive oil and the juice of 1 lemon, and we're actually going to mix them together because we don't want it to separate when we're putting it in. So it's much easier like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to add it. We're going to add it to this mixture slowly. Okay, so what we're going to do, Sharon, is we're going to put this mixture into the mixture that's in the blender already. But in order to be able to pour it properly, it's so much easier if you just put it into a jug so that you can pour consistently and that it will blend at the same time. So we put the blender on and we just do this. We start off slowly and you just do it. We're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to it. It's best to do this afterwards as well because you also want to do it according to taste as well. So you don't want too much. The garlic is very, very powerful. So you don't want too much pepper in it.
The smell is absolutely delicious.
It smells so wonderful.
So there's your mayonnaise.
This is a mayonnaise.
By adding the oil, we get
and then what's great
texture.
about putting salt in this is because salt actually brings out the flavor of the garlic.
Right.
So you put some salt in. And also, I remember when you made your burgers, you didn't put too much salt into your burger mixture, which is great because a lot of our sauces have a lot of salt in it. So then that will just add to those flavors. And then we're just going to blend it for a little bit. And there we go. This should be ready. Okay, Sharon, my next sauce, as you can see, is a blend of spices, which I'm sure that you can smell. Garlic, chili. So we have some chilies, which they are actually from our garden, that we dry. And then if I want to use them, then I just put them into a little bit of boiling water for a while just to puff them up again so that they're not so dry. I've got about 6 garlic cloves over here, but really it's a matter of taste as to how much garlic you want. The same with the chilies, depends on your taste buds and how much you can take. We've got some cumin. We've got some baharat, which is a spice from Israel, which has got a blend of cinnamon in it, which is really, really nice. You don't have to use that because it's not always available. We've got some coriander and some paprika, some olive oil, and some salt. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll take the chilies out of the water. You can see they've puffed up quite nicely. And we're just going to cut the stalks off. And we're going to cut them open. Now, again, over here, it depends on your taste as to whether you actually want the seeds in them or not. Some people keep the seeds in, like our family. The more seeds, the better.
Does it make it hotter?
It definitely does make it hotter if you keep the seeds in. So I'm just going to use a few chilies over here. I'll put these back again. And we're then going to put them into the blender. I'm just going to take a few garlic cloves. I won't use all 6. I'll just put 4 garlic cloves in, and we'll put a teaspoon of cumin, a teaspoon of baharat, a teaspoon of coriander, and a teaspoon of paprika. At this point, we will definitely add our salt. Just a few turns of the salt is fine. And then we'll get the blender to mix it all up, and we will add our olive oil. I've got about a cup of olive oil over here, but you just add slowly so that you can see you don't want it too oily. You want it to have a thick texture. Yeah, you don't want it to be very, very thin. Okay, so you want to just ensure that all the spices are blended together so that they don't actually get stuck underneath the blade. Obviously, if you're making a much bigger quantity, then that is less of a problem.
So it's more of a textured kind of sauce, not as smooth as
No, definitely not. In fact, you don't want it too smooth. You definitely don't want it too smooth. Such a hot sauce, you're not going to kind of like use it as much as you would use a monkey gland sauce or a mushroom sauce on your burger. It's basically just to add a layer onto your burger. What's amazing about this sauce, it's very, very Moroccan. Used in Morocco for almost anything. So it goes onto meat, it goes onto fish, it goes onto chicken. It is dipped. You can dip whatever you want into it. You can dip bread into it, which is delicious, a nice homemade white bread that is still warm, and this is absolutely divine. And then
smells it too.
That's it. So you can smell that with all the different spices blended together, just to finish off your magnificent burgers. Okay, Sharon, should we put our burgers and our sauces together?
Let's do it.
And see what it tastes like.
I think we should start off by putting one of the sauces on, one of your sauces. I'm going to take this one. Now, as we recall, this is quite spicy, so we don't have to smother it.
No.
Okay, and we can just put a little bit on.
A little bit. I wouldn't mix this with ajada because you wanted the sauces to be completely different. So hopefully you'll have more than one burger for the meal. But I'll take some ajada and I'll put it on mine, and we can share our tastes.
Right. Then what we can do is we can also put some fried onion rings on top. Okay, these are chopped, but never mind.
What's nice with the ajada is that it can be used as a salad dressing as well, which is phenomenal. So I'm going to put some lettuce on mine because it will go very nicely with the lettuce, with the salad leaves. Sliced raw onions on mine. Also goes very nicely with the garlic and ajada. And
I'm going to slice some tomato. What's this? Tomato, piece of tomato on, maybe 2. This is going to be a big one.
This is a big burger.
And we build them.
I'm actually going to steal some tomato from you, and I'm going to put it on the side over there. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been a pleasure cooking with you, and I really and truly hope that we get the opportunity to cook again together.
Lovely, l'chaim.
In our last installment of our series, The Temple and Today, Rabbi Liebenberg explains the origins of the Bima, which is the podium located in the center of the synagogue. The Torah is read from the Bima, and some of the prayers are led from there as well.
In the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, there were 2 mizbachot, 2 altars. One was a small altar that was in the covered area, in the ulam, in the heichal. And this was a small golden altar upon which incense was brought every single day. However, the larger mizbeach was the mizbeach hanachoshet, the copper altar, originally in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And later on, when King Solomon built the first temple, this was made out of stone. And that was the mizbeach, that was the altar for the sacrifices. All of the different animal sacrifices, the flour sacrifices, and also the wine libations were brought upon the altar. The altar was a square shape, and it had a ramp so that would give access for the Kohanim to get to the top. It's very interesting that when the Torah tells us about the altar, it says that it's not allowed to be made out of hewn stone. You are not allowed to take metal and iron and hew it out. How exactly they were able to make an altar without hewing out the stone is a mystery, and it's something that's discussed by our sages in the Talmud. But why was that? Why was Hashem so particular that you were not allowed to make the altar using metal implements? And the Talmud tells us a very beautiful explanation. It says that iron was created to bring people's lives to an end, to make swords, to make weapons, to make guns. The altar is there to assist people in their process of teshuvah, repentance. They bring a sacrifice to help them atone for sins, to extend their lives. And therefore it's inappropriate to take something that will take away a person's life and to use it to make an altar which is there to extend a person's life. In fact, today we have a custom very similar to this, because our sages tell us that in the place of the altar, today the Jew has his table at home. That's like his altar. And he can bring atonement to himself based on how he acts at his table, especially when it comes to having guests. And therefore, there's a custom that during the benching, when we say the grace after meals, we have to cover knives or remove them, because we don't want something metal, we don't want a weapon on our altar. So we remember this detail even today. Now, every single shul in the world is styled after the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and the Beit HaMikdash. So in our shuls, where is the Mizbeach? Where is the altar? Now, we cannot make an altar in our shuls because that is prohibited. The only place in the world where a person can bring sacrifices is in the temple in Jerusalem. If you bring a sacrifice outside of the temple of Jerusalem, that is a very serious crime. So we cannot make an altar. But what do we make instead? We make a bima. This is a raised platform, usually in the center of the shul, sometimes a little bit towards the back, or sometimes towards the front of the shul. And what do we do on the bima? We read the Torah. This is its main function. Although it's true that in many, many shuls around the world, the chazan also leads the services from the bima, this was not the original custom. The original custom was for the chazan to actually lead the services from right in front of the ark on a little pillar called the amud, a little lectern. But the point of the bima was to read the Torah. And this, our sages tell us, takes the place of the altar. And they say to us as follows, that today, because we cannot bring the sacrifices, well, what do we do? There's so many mitzvot of the sacrifices that can no longer be done. So the Talmud gives us advice. And it says, instead of bringing the sacrifices, learn about them in the Torah, and I'll consider it as if you have brought them. So what do we do on the bima? We read the Torah. And in the Torah is contained the laws of the sacrifices. So the bima takes the place of the altar. And that's why it's in each and every single synagogue around the world. And just as, for example, in the Beit HaMikdash on Sukkot, they would make the hakafot, the revolutions, holding their lulav and etrog around the altar, so today, on Sukkot, we do exactly the same thing. We go around not the altar, but the bima. So in that way, we are forever reminded of this connection between the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, and what Yecheskel called the Mikdash Ma'at, the small sanctuary, the shul, or the place of learning.
In today's quote from chapter 1, Mishnah 15 of Pirkei Avot, Shammai would say, make your Torah study a permanent fixture in your life. Say little and do much, and receive every man with a pleasant countenance. Sadly, we've come to the end of this week's episode of Simcha. As always, it's been a pleasure to have you join us. If you'd like to be in touch with us, please find us on Facebook at Spirit Sister Productions and drop us a line. From myself, Eitan Berger, and the whole team here at Simcha, have a great week and goodbye.